Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and this is The Human Condition. Today our topic is mental health and anxiety and food. This is a topic that I've been asked to do over and over again and to expand on. And I think today our focus is some of the most important pieces to start with when you're just beginning to think about anxiety and food and supplements. It is a great pleasure for me to work with you guys, and I want you to go to our website, humanconditionlab.com, sign up for my free ebooks and membership, and that way we can get you messages and make sure we don't lose track of you through the algorithm. And so please like and subscribe and tell us that you are interested in our work. And give us comments too, because the comments really drive what I do for you and how I answer your questions. And it's often surprising to me which things you really like and which things are less liked. So mental health and anxiety. The first thing that jumps out to me is that everyone seems to be on the bandwagon that depression is more of a problem than anxiety. And I think depression is certainly an anxiety. Depression is certainly a problem, and anxiety should not be marginalized. Anxiety is a real problem, and I think it's growing. I think there's reasons for that, and I'd like to give you those reasons today. There is a tremendous push in medicine to inflict folic acid on people. There is a demand to put it in grains, to put it in food products and processed food. There is a demand to spray it on different kinds of crops. It's impacted in different foodstuffs, especially processed foods. And the reason for that was a really reasonable reason, and it was to prevent neural tube defects. The idea was to prevent the spina bifida and things where the spinal ring doesn't close, and folic acid was supposed to prevent that, and it certainly does and can if you're deficient. But most of the time when folic acid was deficient in people, it was because of processed grains. Cultures that didn't have any processed grains didn't have problems with really any of the B vitamins, much less folic acid. And so the need to supplement and fortify foods with folic acid is really not necessary if you're not eating processed grains. The first thing to know about mental health and anxiety is get rid of grains and processed foods. The next thing is a lot of people have been discovering that there is a SNP, a mutation in your genes called the MTHFR mutation, and there's a bunch of others too that have to do with folic acid and 5-methyl folate and how we use it. And more than 30% of people can be affected by this, and it can be a big deal. So it drives doctors to say, well, you should avoid folic acids, but you should take 5-methyl folate. And I'm not so sure. I think that most people can get the folic acids they need from nature, from organ meats and from meat products and other types of foods, and from not eating the foods that deplete them of that, like the processed grains. So I don't like to give 5-methyl folate in my practice anymore. I used to. At one point I was doing that, and I don't do it anymore. I found that it was more trouble than it was worth, and it was creating more anxiety, and William Walsh says that it causes problems with serotonin. And I absolutely agree that sometimes it can do that. So again, I'm not speaking for him, I'm just telling you some of the stuff that he's reported. My opinions are my own. Another important factor for us is the fat-soluble vitamins. Americans don't have enough fats, they don't have enough saturated fats, and they don't have enough fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. And these are gotten by, yes, some green leafy vegetables, but there's a lot of anti-nutrients in green leafy vegetables. So we really need to get these from meat products and animal products. There is a big problem with oxidation. Oxidation is a huge problem in our culture because we're exposed to oxidative stress all the time. Things like chemicals, things like car exhaust, things like ozone, things like the ozonated air that our computers artificially create when we breathe the air that the fan blows past our computers, all that artificially ozonated air. I'm not talking about the naturally ozonated air in the mountains here in Colorado. I'm talking about the artificially ozonated air that is damaged and oxidative by computers and by our modern equipment. So oxidative stress comes largely from that kind of chemical environment. We also get oxidative stress from eating seed oils. We don't want to do that. And if we can get a hold of our oxidation and not have oxidative damage by not eating all of these sugars, we can control our anxiety. So that means getting vitamin A, D, E, and K, especially K2. Whether you take that as pills or capsules, or whether you actually get it from meat and organ meats, doesn't matter to me as long as you get it. I'd like to see you get it from the best source possible. Another factor that affects anxiety that's huge is just plain eating sugar, especially at night. Women will often get hot flashes and night sweats. People will have anxiety. They'll wake up in the middle of the night. They will have poor sleep. They won't be able to go back to sleep easily from eating sugar. And you can even get that from milk sugar. So even though carnivores eat milk products, sometimes you've got to be careful if you're getting extra milk powder or milk products, especially at night. because what that can do is drive up insulin levels. Pesticides and heavy metals are a problem, and the airway is a problem. So we want to look at the airway and see if the airway is clogged. So many Americans are getting problems with an obstructive airway disease, and they're being placed on a CPAP. And I think that's a real factor and a real problem. However, I think a lot of that is dietary. I think that if we can get our people off of mucus-producing foods and inflammatory foods that inflame our mucous membranes and cause us to deposit fat in our tongue and fat in our livers, we can have better breathing and better regulation of the orexin pathway, which is the pathway that helps us sleep and regulate our sleep along with melatonin. So these are some factors for anxiety to help people deal with anxiety by understanding those things. There is one more factor, which is B12, and I want to mention that there are a couple of forms of B12, and in the old days, people took cyanocobalamin, which was the form of B12 that was used a lot, and then people started taking methylcobalamin so that they could deal with undermethylation and they could methylate better. And that sometimes helps, but sometimes it makes people quite anxious. So people may need to switch from methyl B12 to a hydroxy B12 or a adenylyl B12. And sometimes that helps quite a bit. Sometimes it also helps for them to get that B12 naturally from organ meats and not try to take it from a plant source that's been manipulated. So that's my list of things that can help with anxiety, especially at night.